SARS has said to have set up an effective system that has served government well. Its overall effect needs to be considered so that the economy can be enhanced. Now, it's well recognised that nobody willingly pays tax, but at the same time strongly expects government to deliver on the taxes that we do pay. Now, a good balance is required, although government will seldom concede it extracts too much tax and tends to seek more in various guises. Let's talk about tax reform submission for SMMEs that due November 2013. Of course, we're coming to the end of that. Chris Hart, strategist at Investment Solutions, here to unpack what needs to be done to help grow small businesses in the country. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
I mean, it's interesting if you look at the tax guide for small businesses from SARS. It's 73 pages long. By the time you've got through all of that, decoded it, that's a massive headache for small business owners who have a lot of other issues to worry about apart from just taxes.
No, exactly. The guide is also not the tax code, which is a lot thicker because that's obviously filled with legalese. This is trying to give you the executive summary of the actual tax code, if you like. And that is an indictment. And the one problem that we have is tax complexity. Now, for a small business to unpack that, the complexity, it requires quite a bit of expensive expertise to try and unpack and try and deliver the actual returns that are required. In addition to that, the complexity really puts us on par with other countries, which is also escalating complexity, and that's a problem the world wide over. And this is really an opportunity South Africa should be taking, is to use the Tax Commission to say, can we actually place South Africa in a more competitive position and actually use simplicity, tax simplicity, as a competitive advantage.
There's a global phenomenon where tax systems are all becoming more and more complex.
Exactly. It's not just the complexity of the individual taxes, it's also the number of taxes that you have to deal with, each requiring their own bureaucracy and expertise to unpack. And so this is something that we can actually unpack and look for. Small businesses, this is particularly bad because you need then economies of scale to unpack it. And when you're a small business, you're already battling with a whole heap of other challenges. To actually devote resources to compliance costs basically places them in a very difficult competitive position, and it works against the own tax base because you're raising the cost of doing business. The capacity to expand is constrained, plus the actual profitability is constrained with the compliance cost. And so if one can actually
Chris, sorry to interrupt, but we all know that small and medium-sized businesses are the big generators of employment in a country. So
correct.
Of course we should be doing everything we can to help them. I've spoke to somebody who's in the employment business the other day, and he said that what's happened is that because of the complexities not only of the tax system but all sorts of other regulatory hurdles that small businesses face when trying to either set up or continue doing business, they're driving small businesses underground. So they're still operating, but they're paying people in cash and they're doing business in a way that makes them slip through the net because they just can't be bothered to go through all these different hoops that they have to jump through, if you like.
Well, I think it's more than that. In an emerging situation, what happens is that tax complexity and compliance cost actually just keeps emerging businesses in the informal sector, which actually puts a huge ceiling on their growth. We've seen in Johannesburg, for instance, a cleanup that's taken place. Instead of trying to build these emerging businesses into something more substantial where they actually can build capital, etc., we've actually taken them and smashed them rather. And that I think is a problem. We've got to actually provide alternatives for people.
I mean, you've basically put together a plan, and you said some things need to be scrapped, some things need to be consolidated. So let's look at some of the ideas you have around this simplified tax code here in South Africa, because what are the big taxes that we pay right now that need to be scrapped altogether in your view?
Well, any taxes that tax capital formation, in other words, what I call taxing seeds rather than taxing harvest. So things like capital gains tax, whether every single other country has them or not is irrelevant. In a country that's capital deficient with a huge unemployment problem, this is actually it's crazy to actually be taxing capital formation, transfer duty in houses, tax on dividends earned, tax on interest earned, and death duties, and the taxes that you face when you actually at the point of retirement also sap the household's ability to accumulate capital. And it's households that need to accumulate capital because it's households that will form the majority of small businesses, or the resources will be found in households to form small businesses. So if you don't have that, you don't have small businesses. We have what's called the missing middle in South Africa, very strong corporate sector, and that's because during apartheid, the corporate sector outgrew the economy. It's really very strong, but it's meant that we've got a gap, and that's one of the reasons why we've got this unusually high unemployment rate. And so you need to actually start allowing, or at least facilitating, opening up the space to get the small business sector to be established and also to grow.
Yeah.
And so any taxes that hamper that require economies of scale need to be reformulated so that small businesses don't have to actually suffer those particular problems. So the use of technology. Can you have pre-populated tax reforms? In other words, the work gets done by SARS using the electronic footprint and electronic paper trail from bank records, etc., to actually derive a tax return. Can we reduce the number of tax returns? Can we reduce the precision and perfection that's required for each return? And just say, just have an end of year audit thing. Can we support small businesses through not being so harsh on the cash flow? A lot of taxes is payable when the business is incurred, but the cash hasn't come in, and small businesses struggle from cash. So can we move to a cash-based tax system for small business, for instance, that will help to at least alleviate the pressure on cash flow? It's not to pay tax. It's so important to understand that businesses need to be contributing to the tax base, all right, not trying to find excuses, but we need to find easy ways of accessible so that we don't raise the cost of doing business, which then becomes self-defeating.
Yeah.
Chris, there's a couple of lines that I just want to take out of the report that I've got here, and it says the first one that says the tax system should not be seeking to tax everything, but rather looking to raise resources within the reasonable constraints of the resources base. It just seems to me, I know SARS is a world-class operation working under very difficult circumstances, but it's almost as though it's getting a little bit too clever, a little bit too intricate for our economy. The other thing is said right at the end here, it must be recognised that all wealth in society originates from some sort of business or enterprise activity. This is not well understood. These are very, very basic things, but I think it is very basic. If you've got a business and the business is earning money, that business must pay tax. Simple as that.
Exactly, but one needs to actually say, how do you apply the resources in a business that's really just starting up and growing? Small businesses will be, if they've got a successful business model, they will actually be growing their employment footprint, etc. And so we need to try and find ways of not inhibiting this from the tax, from the tax point of view. So look to consolidate taxes where it's possible. Instead of having a UIF and a skills levy, etc., can these taxes be consolidated and split up in the backroom of the SARS rather than present the taxpayer with quite a few returns for each type of tax that you've got? Are there taxes that are effectively nuisance taxes that don't raise very much revenue?
Nuisance taxes. I think everyone thinks the taxes are nuisance taxes.
Not all. It's a case of there's taxes that are there that create a need to comply, but they don't raise very much revenue for the fiscus.
Chris, we've got to wrap this up. What are you going to do with this proposal? Do you take it to the Commission?
No, this is for the Commission. The important thing is that the tax thing is firstly gets circulated widely so that the public can participate. Now that's what the Davis Tax Commission is going to do. So we give it into the Davis Tax Commission, they have a look at it, but then they're going to produce a report which is going to be open for public consumption. But I think it's important to raise awareness. This is the opportunity of the tax base, if you like, to actually interact with the actual tax authorities and say, not to pay no tax, but can we devise a system that serves the country better, that doesn't look to solve SARS's problem, but the country's problems as a whole.
Yeah.